So, your shading needs work now, does it? Lucky for you, I'm going to share with you my techniques so that you can draw better characters like never before. It is great for beginners or if you just want to step it up. So if you're ready to say goodbye to your crappy values, let's get it. Now, first we are going to diagnose what the issue is with your shading, and then we're going to demonstrate what the solution is. So, as I've said before, drawing is a process. It is the process of observing your subject, of taking the time to understand your subject, and then of executing upon that. So, if your shading is suffering, chances are you do not understand values or shadow shapes well enough. Therefore, you cannot execute upon that effectively, Now, first you need to understand how values work, and so starting with the sphere right here, we've got the light side on the left where the light is coming from, and we've got the shadow side on the right. Now this can be broken down even further, so say we've got the light side in green and the shadow side, the shadow side in red. And the shadow side can be broken down even further. We've got the form shadow, which is the shadow of the form itself, and the cast shadow, that is the shadow being cast by the form itself. So again, we've got the light side, shadow side, and in the shadow side, we've got the form shadow and the cast shadow. Now, I've got a free guide below that goes into much greater detail on this, as well as how to utilize it to create better characters. So you definitely want to grab that, but for now, I'll keep this very simple. We'll only focus on 2 tones. That will be in the description box below, but the reason we're only focusing on 2 tones is because that is all you need, literally all you need to capture the likeness of your subject or your character. I'm going to prove it to you. Tell me you don't know who this is. Now tell me you don't know who this is. Now tell me you don't know who this is. Get the idea? Now let me know in the comments who you think these people are. And if any of you screw this up, I'm judging you. Now the point is you only really need 2 tones to establish likeness. And this will be important for the process I'm going to show you. But first, if you don't mind, feel free to hit the like button below and subscribe if you like what you see and you want to help me spread around this good stuff. So for this, you can see that I've already established the likeness of my subject. So first I started with blocking in the silhouette and the shadow shapes with the sketch. After that, I toned the background and blocked in the subject itself. So you see I've only got 2 tones, one for the light side and one for the shadow side. That is all you need to establish the likeness of your subject. If you want to identify the shadow shapes of your subject more easily, all you have to do is squint at your subject. That way the values will pop out more effectively for you. With this solid foundation established, it's basically a matter of building it up without effing it up. Now the question is, how do we use this to get into the shading process? Let's get back to the values. Notice how the edge of the form shadow is soft, whereas the edge of the cast shadow is relatively harder. We are going to utilize that. So just like with our sphere, we're going to make the form shadows relatively softer and the cast shadows will be relatively harder. As I'm developing the shadow side, I'm keeping in mind that the darkest values tend to be within the core shadow, which is within the border of the light and shadow side, as well as the cast shadow. So I want to keep that in mind. And for the light side, you want to add lighter tones to the surfaces that are most directly receiving light, keeping in mind that the highlights are the reflections of the light source. Now, this method of drawing is basically the bark method, which is a great way of enhancing your ability to visualize the lighting of your subject and therefore enhance your shading ability, and you'll draw better characters. And the guide that I put below goes way more in depth into that, but you're probably wondering, how do I utilize this method to enhance my character drawings? Good question. Primarily, you want to train in this method so you become familiar with the process. And you do this through meaningful repetition, not needless repetition, but meaningful repetition. Otherwise, you will fall into the trap of just going through the motions like so many people do. You may want to start with subject material that is more simple in nature, like what you see here, and then eventually you want to build up to more complex subjects. At this point in time, you want to focus on getting the process down to the point where it becomes almost second nature to you. Now, eventually, you may notice that you are more easily able to identify the shadow shapes of your subjects. This is a good sign because it means you are internalizing this knowledge. And then beyond that, you may find that you can rely less on the process itself. You will be able to condense your process by combining multiple steps into one single step. For example, what you'll notice here is that I like to do my shading as I sketch. Now, I'm doing this before I even block in the entire silhouette. I'm just going straight for it. And that's because I've internalized so much of this already. So while you may be able to spot indications that I'm utilizing the bark method to a degree, you won't see me use it in its entirety. And that's because a lot of what's taking place in that method is happening within my mind. And because I do the shading as I sketch, I am now able to get a better sense of the volume early on in the process. And when it all comes together, you can see the benefits. So if you like what you see, like and subscribe and grab the guide on your way out. And until next time, peace.